In this project, we are going to build a weather app with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And as you can see, we have some degrees here, the name of the city. We have also a button to change the city and also some extra information. So if I click here, change the city, you can change Stockholm to, for example, Bangkok, and it searches for all possible cities with this name. I can select Bangkok in Thailand, and the information changes. The app also remembers the last city we have entered. So even if I refresh, it will still open the last city we have entered. So now let's jump into the code. So as always, we start with an empty directory, and here inside I will create a new file, an index.html. And in our index file, let's add some basic HTML structure here. Yeah, let's change the title to weather app. Yeah, and now let's just test, and let's open preview. You can do it by drag and dropping the index file to Chrome. All right, so now we have preview here, and now the first thing is that our app will have two screens. So the first screen will be search form, where we can change cities or select city. And the second screen will be the weather for a specific city. So we need two parts here. The first will be form. And in this form, we just need an input type text. Yes. And here I will also put an empty list where we can put our results. We don't need any action here on our form. Now let's also add some placeholder here. So let's do search city like this. And here inside, let's put some temporary data. So let's say it will be 5 elements, and let's add some tests here, test $. So we have 5 test elements, as you can see here. And now let's style it a little bit. So I will add the CSS file, styles CSS. Now I will add it to my directory, new file, styles CSS. And now let's add some styling here. Okay, first I want to change this font because I don't like this, the default one. So I will get Roboto font from Google Fonts. Yeah, and we only need import here for our CSS. So we'll import here, and I will take the default one will be 400. So it will be the regular here. And I also want the bold, so it will be 700. I'll do like this and 700. Now I can close this one. And now for the styling for the body, let's do font family, and here Roboto and sans serif as the default. And now the font is much better. I'm a huge fan of dark themes, so let's do background color. And here just 110, so almost dark, almost pitch black, but the color of the text will be white, so the text will be still visible. Now let's center our app. So let's say that this form element will be display block, and let's say it will be width 100% by default, but max width will be 400 pixels. And now we'll also add the margin of, let's say, 50 pixels from the top and the bottom, and auto from the sides. And the text align will be center. All right. Now, first, let's fix our input. Then we will fix the styling of our list. So now let's start with an input type of text. And here we want to get rid of the background. So background transparent, and the color, let's do white. Yeah. Now let's fix the border. So border will be 0 by default, but we want border for the bottom part to be, let's say, 2 pixels solid, and let's say 3/8 like this. And I also want to change the border color when we focus on this input. So input type text, focus, border color, and I have prepared an pretty orange color. So I'll copy and paste it here. So now if I focus on this input, the color changes. I will also remove this outline 0, because we don't need it. Yeah, now it's better. Let's maybe also make a font size a little bigger, 1.2 rem, and also some padding. Let's say 5 pixels from the top and the bottom and 0 from the sides. Yeah, that will be much better. All right, now for the list, we don't need those dots, and we don't need this weird padding here. So let's do UL padding 0, margin 0, or even better, we can specify it on all elements as a default. I'll put it somewhere up here. Yeah, but for our list, we want to get rid of those dots here. So let's do list style none. Now the dots are gone, but the text align should be left. And now, as you can see, it's not centered. And this is because our input takes just a small portion of our width, and we can make this more narrow here. So let's change it to 300. Yeah. And the input should take 100% of our width. So let's do display block and width of 100%. Yeah, like this. Right, so now let's style a specific item of our list. So let's do ul li, and here let's add some background. And here I will put a light gray. So let's say 333, like this. Now I also want to add some margin from the top on each element. Let's say 2 pixels, maybe more. Let's try 4. No, that's too much. Now some padding, let's say 10 pixels. Yeah, that's good. Now let's also do cursor pointer. So when we hover the mouse, it will be a hand icon. Okay, here we have like a name of the city, but we want also to have like more info here about the country or something else. So I will put a separate span here and let's say UK. And I want to make this UK different color. So ul li span, and let's say the color will be 777. That's better. So now when this part is styled, we can use API to make it work. So let's open weather API, and we are going to use current weather data. Let's open the docs, and here is the endpoint we are going to use. So let's go to index.html, and we need to add a JavaScript here. So let's do script, and let's do source, and let's call the file weather.js. And now we need to create it. So here, new file, weather.js. All right. Now, as you can see, to use this API endpoint, we need latitude and longitude for a specific city, and then also API key. So first API key you can register for free and get inside here under the user, and here are API keys. So I create a new here test, and I will copy and I will put it inside my JavaScript file. So let's do key equals and my API key. All right, so now to get this latitude and longitude, as you can see here inside, they are saying that latitude and longitude you can get using geocoding API. So let's see here, and here you can search for a specific city and they will return like possible city names. And this is what we are going to need. So first we're gonna use this. So first we need to register an event. When someone types here, we want to show the list of possible cities. So let's do document, query selector, and now input of type text, because we have only one text input here. And now we can do add event listener, and we want to register an event on key app. And here we can, as a second parameter, we can put a function name or the function itself. So I will do just an empty arrow function like this. Oops, like this. And here we are going to search for the cities. So the first thing is we are going to need the phrase from this input. And to get the phrase, we can use query selector for this input, or we can use an event object that we get here. And I will use the event object. So event target value. So we have our phrase. Now let's test to console log it. Console log phrase to see if it works. Let's inspect console. And if I type here Stockholm, yeah, you can see it logs here. But now the problem is that I don't want to trigger searching for every keystroke, because this will be pricey. And instead I want to wait until the user stops typing. And to do this, I will use low dash debounce. So low dash, and here I'll just copy from CDN here, copy HTML part. Let's go back to index.html and let's put it here. So here we have our low dash library. Let's go back to weather.js. And now when we have our low dash library, we can put the searching functionality into separate function. So let's do function search, and here we will have an event object. Now let's just get rid of this. Let's put it here. And instead of this arrow function, let's do just search. Right, and now to debounce the search functionality, we can do just const, and let's call this one debounced search, and we will call underscore debounce, low-debounce, and the first param will be the code we want to run. So let's do empty arrow function and just search. And the second param will be how much time we want to debounce it. So I would say it's 100 milliseconds. Now we can use debounced search instead of search. So let's do debounce search. And now if I search here, let's do Stockholm. Right now the problem is that we don't get the event object here, but that's not a problem. I can just get the value from the input. Let's do like this. We get the input and the value. Let's try again, Stockholm. And as you can see, it showed only once. It waited 600 milliseconds until I stopped typing. If I do just stall, now it showed up. If I continue Stockholm, it will show Stockholm. All right, but now we want to use the API to find the possible cities. So instead of console logging, let's use fetch. And here, let's just put this URL here. And what do we have here? First, we need to do await here because fetch is an async function. And now we also need to do async here. Yeah, that's better. So now there are a few things we need to replace here, the phrase. So I will get rid of this. And instead of doing those, I will use backticks. So it will be easier to put the variables here. So here first, let's do phrase. Limit will be, let's say it will be 5. And the app ID is the key. So we can do just key. All right. This will return a response. So let's do const response equals this. And now we wanted JSON data. So let's do const data equals await. Also response.json. And maybe let's just console log this data, console log, and let's do data. Now let's see how it looks like. If we search for something, let's do Stockholm. As you can see here, we get an array of 5 elements, and inside each we get the name, date, and country. So now we want to put all of those 5 inside our list here. So first, let's go quickly back to index.html and let's get rid of those test elements. So the list is empty. And now let's get rid of this console log. So when we get new data, the first thing we want to do is to clear the list. So first let's get our UL element. So let's do const UL equals document query selector, and let's do just form UL. And now let's do UL inner HTML and empty. Now we want to display all results from data. So now we want to do for I loop. So let's do for let I equals 0, I smaller than data length, and I plus plus. So for I starting with 0, we are looping through the length of the data. And now let's get a specific item. Item equals data of I. And now we want to put this item into a UL element. So let's do UL inner HTML. And we want to add more HTML inside. So let's do plus equals. And here we want to put an li element. So let's do like this. And let's test by doing item.name. And let's test it. So Stockholm. Yeah, it works. But we also want to get this country code. And it's also assigned this item. So let's see what do we have in a specific item. Let's maybe do console log item and check Stockholm. So we want to display the name Stockholm. We want to also display the country Sweden here, but we also need this latitude and longitude, and everything is inside item. So I can actually, instead of just getting the item, I can do like this and get all the children that I need. So let's do name, latitude, longitude, and country. So here instead item.name, let's do just .name. And here also we need to put our span element here. And here we are going to do country. Country. We also need to save this latitude and longitude somewhere. So I will use data attributes here. So let's do data lat, and here let's do latitude. Data longitude will be $longitude, and let's also save the name. So data name $ curly brackets and the name. All right, now let's just format it a little better. Now let's test the searching again. Stockholm, yeah, we get the country codes, and let's see if we have the data attributes here. Yes, we do get them. So now the next part is that when we click on a specific city, we want to use this latitude and longitude on a selected city, and we want to show the weather for this specific city. So let's go back to our index.html, and as you can see here, we have our form element, but now we need another screen and another element. So let's call this one a div with a name or ID of weather, like this. I added this ID weather so it will be easier to point it in JavaScript. And for now we can do form style display none. So this will be hidden, and we can focus on styling the weather part. So for a selected city, we want to show the city name. So let's do h1 and let's add ID city. And here let's just do, for example, Stockholm. Yeah, we have Stockholm here. And what else do we need? We want an icon with clouds or sun or something. So let's do img, and the ID will be icon. The source will be empty, and the alternative text will be also empty. All right, so under the city name, we want a button to change the city. So we can go back to the search form. So let's do button and ID change, and here just change city. All right, and under the button we want to get some extra information about wind, how the temperature feels like, and the humidity. So let's add a div with class name info, and here we'll do 3 divs. So div times 3, and we will have 3 columns, and inside each column we will have an, let's say, h3 with a label inside, for example wind, and we'll also have another div. So let's do plus div with a value. Let's do dot value. So we'll have a class name here, and the value will be, for example, 2, like 2 kilometers per hour. We also need this kilometers per hour, so let's do kilometers per hour, and this will be inside the span, and this span will be actually inside the div value. So now if I hit tab, I get wind here with 2 kilometers per hour, and if I inspect it, you can see that we have div class info with 3 divs inside, and each div has an h3 with the label and div class value. Inside we have the value itself and extra label. So now let's style this weather result. Let's go to style CSS, and first we want to center this part of the app too. So actually the same thing that we did with the form, we want to do this with our div with ID weather. So let's do just ID weather like this, and now everything is centered. That's cool. Now let's go to the bottom and let's add some padding and stuff. Actually, we forgot about the main thing, which is the number of degrees. So let's go to index.html and let's change the city to h2, because this is not the most important. The most important will be the degrees here. So let's do h1 and let's do the degrees. So for example, 20 degrees Celsius. Let's do 20 degrees Celsius. But this sign I need to get from the internet. So let's do degrees HTML symbol. Yeah, this is what I need. So I will just get HTML version, copy. Here I'll just, yeah, we don't need this space here. Yeah, that's cool. All right, now back to style CSS. We can close this part. First, let's style this city name. So let's do ID city. And first I want to get this pretty orange color. Yeah, this one. And now let's style the button for the changing of the city. So button with ID change. Let's do border of 2 pixels, solid, and let's do maybe 888. But no background, so background color transparent. The color of the text should be white, so FFF. We also need some padding, let's say 4 pixels from the top and the bottom and 10 pixels from the sides. Let's also add some border radius of, let's say, 20 pixels. That's much better. Now let's style our extra information part. So wind, it was div with class name info, and here we want to change the display type to grid, so we can do some columns here. Let's also do grid template columns, and here we'll have 3 columns, so let's do 1FR, 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 so each column will have the same amount of space, and we have it here. Now for degrees, let's make it bigger. Degrees, let's say maybe the font size will be 3 rem, yeah, like this. Now we want to add some spacing between here Stockholm and change the city and also those columns. So under the degrees, let's do margin bottom of, let's say, 1 rem. Under the city, let's do margin bottom of, I don't know, just a little bit, 10 pixels, yeah. And with the button and the info columns, let's do button change will be margin bottom of 20 pixels. That's much better. Now let's add the correct labels inside our info div. So the first will be wind, the second will be feels like, and the third will be humidity, and I will change the styling of those. So div info, we have hrefs here as labels. So let's do font size, and let's do 1 rem. Let's do also letter spacing, so some extra spacing, let's say with 2 pixels. It's too much, 1 pixel, yeah. And let's also make those uppercase, that's better. Maybe a little smaller, let's do 0.8 rem, yeah, that's much better. Also those extra labels here should not be that visible as the digit values. So let's do div info h3, and we have spans here with those extra labels. So let's do color and try with 888. Oh, sorry, it's not inside h3, it's inside div with value, yes, like this. And let's make it also smaller, font size 0.8 rem, but the values itself should be bigger. So let's copy this part, let's put it here, let's do font size, and let's change it to maybe 2 rem. That's better. Now let's fetch the actual data. So now let's go back to our index.html, and we want to remove this display none from the form, and we want to add it on the weather information. So display none, and we will have this form as a default. Now let's go back to our weather.js. And now the next thing is that when someone types here Stockholm, for example, and clicks on a li element, we want to show the weather for this specific item. So we need to register a click event on a li element. So because those elements are created dynamically, I need to register this event on the body. So document body, and here add event listener, click, and here I will do just an empty arrow function like this. And here I will get actually the event object, and let's do console log event. Now if I open the console here, my browser, let's do Stockholm. So now if I click on a specific city, I get an event. And as you can see, inside target, we have an li element. So in this element, we have also dataset with all information that we added to this li element. So first I need to check that event target is li, and if it is, we can get all this data and we can use the API to search using this information. All right, so first let's get the li. So let's do const li equals event target. And now we want to get this data. So we can do just const and here just extract everything. So let's do latitude, longitude, and the name. And all of this will come from li dataset like this. And now because this will also run on any click event that we get on the body. So for example, even this will trigger an on click event. We want to check that we get this information. We want to know that the clicked element is actually a newly created li element. So here I will do if, and if latitude, or actually if not latitude, I want to do return nothing. So here, everything that is under this will not be run if we don't have this information. So with having this information, latitude, longitude, and name, we can show the weather for this specific city. So let's maybe register a new function, and let's call this one show weather, and we'll do this for specific latitude, longitude, and name. So we'll use those three as params, and we'll call this function from here, show weather, latitude, longitude, and the name of the city. All right, so here first, we want to use the API to get the weather. So current weather data, let's open the docs. Here is the endpoint, and here we can do just const response equals await, and here the URL. I'll actually use the backticks here so we can put some variables inside. All right, so first I need to put latitude here, also longitude, and the API key like this. And now there's also units param, and I will use metric units. So let's do end units equals metric like this. And now let's see what we got in the response. So const data equals await response to JSON, and it's red because we need to make this function async like this. Now let's open here. Let's try to click it, Stockholm. If we click, nothing happens because I forgot to console log data. Now if I do Stockholm, if I click, we get a lot of information. But the main thing we are going to use is this one. Here we have how the temperature feels like. We have humidity, and we have temperature here. Also inside weather, first element here, we get the icon that we can use. And here we also have wind, the speed of the wind. So now let's just extract all of this information. So now first from the main element, we can get feels like, humidity, and temperature. So let's do const temperature equals data main temperature. And the next thing will be feels like. So let's call this one feels like, and it was also inside data main feels like, but with underscore and small l. Also humidity, so humidity also from the main element. Now the wind speed, so let's do const wind equals data wind, I think it was speed. And the last thing was icon, and it was inside the as a const icon, the data weather. It was an array with one element, weather. So let's do array of here 0 and icon like this. Now try to console log everything. So temperature, feels like, humidity, wind, and icon. And let's also show the data. So now let's do Stockholm. And if I click, we get feels like, humidity, icon, temperature, and wind. All right, so we have everything. So we can get rid of those console logs here. And now we just need to put the data inside our HTML. So let's go back to index.html and see how it looks like. So we have a div with class info, and we have 3 divs here, 1, 2, 3. But to make it easier to point for a specific div, let's add IDs here. The first ID will be the wind value here. The second will be, let's call this feels like value. And the third, let's add an ID of humidity value. Yeah. Now, if we go back to weather.js, let's put all this information. So first, the name. Let's do document, get element by ID. And inside our index.html, we have h2 with city. And let's replace this Stockholm with something else. And let's do city and inner HTML equals name. Right, next thing is this degrees. So let's just copy this degrees Celsius. And here, let's do document, get element by ID, degrees, inner HTML equals, and here we want to temperature, and we also want to add this Celsius sign. All right, so now those 3 as the document, get element by ID, and the first will be feels like value, inner HTML will be feels like, but we also want to add a span with Celsius and degrees. So I will just copy paste it here. Right, so now I will just add 2 more, and I will also change those to wind value, and the third one is humidity value, and the second will be wind, and the third will be humidity. And inside wind, let's change this. We don't need the inside wind. We don't use the Celsius, we use kilometers per hour. Inside humidity, yeah, it will be just percentage sign. All right, now for the icon, let's scroll here, and you can see that we get an icon here. Let's search for it. Here we have all the icons, and here is the URL that we need to use for an icon. So let's go back to our app and let's put the icon. So document, get element by ID, icon, and here we don't change the inner HTML but source, and the source will be this. But instead of this 10D, we will make those backticks here so we can easier put some variable here and $sign and icon, and not ×2, but let's do ×4, so it will be better quality. So now we put all this information, but we need to hide this form element, and we want to show the weather element instead. So let's do document, query selector, and here just form. Let's do style, display equals none, so we'll hide the form element. And now document, query selector, or we could actually just do get element by ID, and here just weather, and let's do style, display, block. Now let's try it, Stockholm, and if I click, yeah, we get all this information, but it shouldn't look like this. So we have a few small problems. First, I want to round all those values. And the second is I forgot to put those extra labels inside the span element. So all those, so for the wind, feels like, and humidity, all those extra labels, let's go here and let's add span and also closing span. Yes, like this, span, yeah, like this. And now I also want to round all those values to the nearest integer. So for the temperature, feels like, humidity, and wind, let's not just do equals, but let's do here math.round and let all those values here. Now let's test it again, Stockholm, click, and now everything works perfectly. The button doesn't work, but let's refresh the page. Now let's test with London. Yeah, it works perfectly. So now let's fix this change city button. Let's maybe add some little styling adjustments first. So I want to make it cursor pointer, so it will be a hand icon. And let's do full text transform uppercase and smaller size, font size 0.7 rem. Right, now let's go back to weather.js, scroll to the bottom, and now let's register event for our button. So document, we can do get element by ID, and this one had ID change. Let's do add event listener, and here when someone clicks, we want to run this arrow function. So when someone clicks on the change city, we want to hide this weather div, and we want to show the form element. Oops. So let's do document, get element by ID, weather, and this one we want to hide. So let's do style, display equals none, and we want to show the form. So let's document, query selector, form. We have only one form, so style, display, and here will be block. All right, now let's test it. So let's do London and click here. It works. If I click change city, I can go back and change it to Stockholm. Click here. Yeah, it works. Now another cool feature will be to remember the last city we've entered. So if I refresh, there's nothing here. I need to search for my city again. And I want the app to remember the last city I have entered. So if we go to the click event of the LI element, you can see that we get latitude, longitude, name, and we call the show weather with all this information. Here between, we can actually do local storage to save all the information, and just do set item to latitude with latitude, and also longitude, and also the name. So every time we click on the LI element, so for example, Stockholm, if I click here, the values will be, the weather will be shown and the values will be saved to local storage. So here, if I open inspect and let's go to application, local storage, you can see that longitude, latitude and name has been saved. So now when the JavaScript loads, I can register a new event on load. So let's do a document, body, on load, and here just an empty arrow function. And here I can check when the app loads, do we have anything inside local storage? So if we have local storage, get item latitude, then let's get all the information. So const latitude equals local storage, get item latitude, same with longitude and name. And now with all those values can do show weather with latitude, longitude, and the name. Let's see if it's in correct order, latitude, longitude, name. Yeah. So now if I refresh, it shows the last entered city. Let's maybe also do small adjustments here. The spacing here could be smaller. So let's do ID icon as the margin bottom of -20 pixels. Maybe try 40. Yeah, that's much better. We can also add some small spacing here as the display inline block, as the margin left of, I don't know, 3 pixels. So we get some spacing here between. So I think our app works now. Let's check with Bangkok. Yeah, everything works. And let's maybe check also another city, Gdańsk in Poland. Yeah, the icon changes, the temperature changes, the name changes here, and all of information here also changes. We could also make the city name a little bigger, the font size to rem. Yeah, that is much better. Yeah, so everything works, and that will be it. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Have a nice day and see you in the next one.